today's session, this is the third in the series, which is a series called Financial Tips for Busy People. Today we're going to learn all about organisation, because if we're organised, then financial planning, I think, comes that little bit easier to us and makes it that little bit more meaningful. I'm joined today by 𝗙𝗶, which, well, I'm very excited to tell you all about her, but the thing I'm most excited about is the Marie Kondo connection. I find it, well, I'm looking forward to today. But let me just start by explaining a little bit about me, and then we'll dive into all about Sarah. So I'm a chartered financial advisor, fellow of the PFS, and I was financial advisor of the year for London for 2022-23, and we were shortlisted this year. Sadly didn't win. And then you'll see me lots in the female press, usually Good Housekeeping, Red Magazine. There's something going out in actually Good Housekeeping this month as well, on how to recession-proof yourself, so look out for that. And then this is a book I wrote many moons ago now, called Money Lessons. Sarah, I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sarah. I am a certified Konmari consultant, as well as a coaching psychologist who specialises in finance. So I'm here today primarily to talk about organising your money, because as Lisa has mentioned, if we know where all of our stuff is at, all of our important documents, it makes life so much easier when we're approaching financial tasks and when we're trying to get ourselves to a point where we feel in charge, we feel in control, and we know where all of that money that we're working so hard to earn is going. So that's me.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming along, Sarah.
Thank you.
So this is us. We're currently an all-female team. There's a few more additions to this photo now, and I'm pleased to say we've actually just recruited our first male, poor him, starting in September. So the most important thing for today, and this is the small print, but this is information only. It isn't financial advice, but obviously if you do want financial advice, that's what I'm here for. So I got this from your Instagram, Sarah, and I think it's quite right. 5 hours and 32 minutes scrolling is me time. I mean, I really do that when I come in from work and just need a bit of time on my own. Sorting out my finances, I have no time. So I think that's what we want to overcome today. And so a little recap from last time. So stage 2 was all about small changes you can make, how to put some systems in place, and sort of aligning what it is that you want to achieve financially with how you're actually spending your money. So the first thing is a reminder from last time, and if you're new and haven't seen the last one, just let us know and we can send you that and all of the prep that we sent along with it. But what is your latte factor? And this is really looking at what money leaks do you have and how can you plug them, and are you spending your money in the right places? We looked at the power of small changes. So I'm going to recap those on the next slide. We talked about the power of the 90-day look back. So this is looking back for the last 90 days and working out what did you actually spend your money on, analysing the information that comes from it, and then making any tweaks that you can to improve. And then we did how to automate your money and then how to review it. So these are the small changes. Some of them still really blow my mind. So we just looked at the power of £200 a month. So a lot of people might say that they could cut back by £50 a week. And if you did, these are some of the choices that people might have. So if you haven't really got a cash buffer, the £200 a month over 5 years could build up to just over £13,000 in your savings, which might not seem amazing compared to the other two, but the power of that is that's going to give you choices in the short term to make sure that if you've got an emergency that crops up, if you want to leave the job that you're currently in, the emergency buffer's there for you to make good choices in the short term. The next one is the mortgage. So if you decide to overpay your mortgage by £200 per month and you're on a 25-year mortgage with a £250,000 loan, and you're also on a 4% interest mortgage rate, you would save a whopping £32,000 in interest, and it would mean that you would pay your mortgage off 5 years early, which is really life-changing. Imagine being mortgage-free for an extra 5 years and what you'd do with that money. And then the last one is retirement. If you were a high rate taxpayer and decided to pay that £200 into a pension, obviously you're going to get the tax relief and the tax-free growth that comes from within a pension. Over 20 years, if you did that, and you got 8%, so you would need to be a reasonably high risk investor to get that every year. You'd end up with £112,000 in your pot. So these are big changes, big outcomes from very little changes. And then the last thing I wanted to mention before handing over to Sarah was that 95% of our clients have never taken financial advice before they come to us. So if you're a bit nervous about having financial advice, we've broken down our sort of client onboarding process into real bite-sized pieces. So if you just want to, and I'll explain more at the end, you can just dip your toe in. You don't have to dive fully in and feel like you need to have millions and millions of pounds in the bank to be able to have our services. So over to you, Sarah. Tell us about money mindset.
Yeah, so I am going to kick off by talking to you about money mindset. Now, mindset is something that might feel like a super modern concept or something that we've only been hearing about recently, but it's actually something that psychologists and other types of scientific researchers have been looking at since as far back as the 1920s. The reason being because mindset is something that plays a crucial role in how we learn and how we behave. So when it comes to finances, you can probably start to hear how that way that we view the world can really impact how we act in monetary terms and some of the spending decisions that we make. So it's a really important one. Now, on the slides that follow, I've pulled together some fairly common money mindsets that I come across, particularly when I'm working as a coaching psychologist. And perhaps one or maybe a combination of these resonate with you. I'd love to know and think it would be, really interesting to pop your initial thoughts on that into the chat function. Perhaps you are a planner, for example, and this is somebody who tends to be on top of where their money's at. They know where their policies are, they know how much they earn, how much they owe, they've got a plan for the money and they stick to it. You might perhaps be someone who's actually far more carefree with your money and really associate with that one. Typically what we see in somebody who is carefree with their money is that they tend to spend more spontaneously. If something comes up that actually think, I'll really enjoy that or really love that, I'm going to go with it, which is fantastic. There's no real plan for the money. Or you could be somebody who thinks, oh, I think I'm an avoidant one, actually. So this is a mindset that can be sort of full of juxtapositions, I guess. What I tend to see in people who are avoidant is that they spend a lot of time actually thinking about money and their finances generally, but action doesn't really happen, or it's very slow to happen. So what we see is things like bills going unopened, accounts not checked, very much a feeling of kind of thinking to themselves, I want to take action, I want to get in charge of my money, but it just doesn't really happen. It's something that I'll do when I've got a bit more time. From a scientific perspective, our view of our mindset tends to start to form at around the age of 6 or 7 when it comes to money. And that's based on, family or main caregiver exposures, also environmental factors as well. But despite that formation starting to happen at a very young age, I think it's really important to point out that our mindsets are malleable, so they can change over time. I think the other important point to raise as well is that there's no perfect mindset. And as I said at the outset, sometimes we can be a combination of the two. I don't mind telling you that I'm a planner and also a bit avoidant, actually, which might seem a bit strange given what I do for a living these days. But that's the truth. I catch myself in the act of being, too rigid at times, or thinking, I should check my accounts, but I'm not going to do that, especially if things are a little bit tricky for me emotionally. And also, there's no perfect mindset for any of us to have and to adopt, even though they are changeable. A lot of people can hear about a planning type of mentality and think, oh, that's the mindset that all of us should be. But there are drawbacks as well as pros to each of these. As I used with my own example, as a planner, I am prone to sticking to my plan when I'm in real planning mode, and I miss out on the joys of life at times. Sometimes I also notice that I don't spend on the things that actually are really bringing me value, or that, I perhaps really need because I've stayed on autopilot. So that's quite a key drawback that isn't necessarily front of mind when we think about planners. So all of these have good points, and all of these has points that once we recognise them, we might wish to think about and maybe tweak, because they can really influence how we behave and how successful we are when it comes to making changes. So really, really encourage people to have a bit of a think about that. And of course, there are more than 3 mindsets as well. These are just some that I hear about really often when I tend to speak to people, or when people hear what I do for a living, actually, and they come along and they approach me about it.
Do you find, Sarah, that most people are too? Because I think I would be a real hectic combination of planner and carefree. Most people too.
2 or more, I would say. Or at one point they'll recognise, actually, that used to be me. I used to be really spontaneous, not care, but then make changes, and actually they can see that they've gone extreme planner. That can come up quite a lot as well. But yeah, I think a combination is really common. And also just feeling initially, when you start to think about that mindset piece, thinking, oh, do I want to be the mindset I've identified? And it can take a little bit of time to warm up to, especially if you have a mindset that actually you didn't really quite think you had, or feel like it's something that you really need to change. Yeah. Quite a tangible example of the different outcomes actually that we can have when we bring that mindset portion into this type of work is represented, I think, by this quote. We can, and money used to be clutter, that is, for anyone who can't see it. This is a quote that I put on my Instagram, and that people repeat back at me when I go to their houses, or if I'm just having a chat with them. It seems to make people stop in their tracks and shudder. Because you really start to contemplate how your attitude to money shows up in those physical possessions. But when it comes to mindset, and we see mindset work in this and how we deal with this type of issue, lots of piles of stuff around us, we can approach this problem purely physically. So saying, I've got way too much stuff, I'm going to deal with these piles, I'm going to do a mass declutter. But what you tend to find in individuals who do that, who take that approach, is that the clutter builds up again because they've not addressed how it is that they view the world. So those emotions, those beliefs around money. And when you build that in, what you tend to find is that different insights come about that really yield lasting change. One that came up quite recently when I was with a client is that the person had a real aha moment that, and they don't mind me sharing this, is that they felt they didn't deserve money. And what that person was doing was spending it really quickly. They weren't in debt, but they were spending it as fast as they earned it, whether it was on themselves or spending it for other people. They felt really guilty about having a high salary and didn't come from money. So that really played out in their spending decisions. But once they had that aha moment and could see how that mindset was playing out in their behaviours, it was a real trigger for them to take a stop and to think, right, do I want this? Do I need to spend this? Actually, how do other people feel about me buying all of these things for them? It really made changes from the transactions perspective and the money perspective, and the clutter could also be dealt with in a way that was meaningful. And actually, it looks like it's not coming back, and purely because the person now knows, well, the thing I need to tackle is the mindset piece. Yes, clearing the space, but now that I understand why I'm doing this, I'm going to have to work on that. And that's where the core bit of my work is going to be. So you can really see the difference, I hope, by having that explained. I think one of the next things that we'd also talk about is that when Lisa and I got together to have a chat about these different slides, one of the things we really noticed was that we have oh, sorry, Lisa, the slides have just frozen on my screen.
Want me to go back a bit?
Yeah. Oh, actually, sorry. I think I'm speaking over you. My apologies.
No, don't worry. You go.
I'll hand off to you.
Thanks. So I think when we were planning this, I think what Sarah said to me that was stuck out to me was, you've got to identify your own behaviours to be able to manage it. So some people are nervous to even begin, and so how do you start could be something that you could help with, Sarah. The next ones would be identifying the things that you're good at, because I think a lot of clients focus on, oh, I'm not very good at this, I'm not very good at X, Y, and Z, but actually rewording that to focus your mind on what you're actually good at could help you actually begin. And then understanding the psychology of your spending habits. I'd love you to psychoanalyze mine, Sarah.
They're very happy to do so. And you used the word psychoanalyze. Even Freud had a difficult relationship with money. And he absolutely did, yeah. He described money as laughing gas to him. So a bit of a fun fact for you. And he also had a very interesting relationship with debt, especially when he had some quite rich benefactors. He felt that the sense among the psychoanalytical community is that he felt entitled to that money based on his writings and his diaries around it. So no one is immune from this stuff.
Even Freud is flawed.
Exactly.
And so I think then the next thing is really what's important to you. So this links back to the second webinar that we did, and thinking about what are you spending on your money on versus what brings you the most happiness. Like, are you spending money, getting the most value out of the money that you have? And then what is your non-negotiable? So is it that you really enjoy your very expensive subscription to the gym, but that makes you happy? Is it that you're happy to forgo certain things over having a really long summer holiday? And I see this a lot with clients when we model certain scenarios in their financial plan, and we do would you rather. So for example, would you rather have an extra holiday a year now or retire 5 years early? And I think sometimes having it laid out to you that clearly can really help you funnel the money in the right direction that is aligned with your goals. And then a reminder, if you're struggling with this, can be very good to do your 90-day look back. And for the clients that are on the call already, we have the facility to do this really, really easy for you, because you can now link through open banking your accounts through the portal, and then the portal will analyze it for you. So you don't actually even have to do the hard graft. But there's lots of other apps out there that can help you if you're not a client. I'll hand back to you, Sarah.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, as Lisa was saying, that look back and making some of these small changes can make a really, really big difference. What we tend to find with ourselves is that success, whether we're talking about money or other forms of behavior change, is really about a sort of a constant execution of small daily habits or daily actions, in a sense. And there is science behind why that is effective for us. It's effective because small steps are far less intimidating to take than those big ones. And it's also effective because of how we are programmed, how our brains are programmed to view loss. We feel big losses quite significantly so. Small losses, less so. And so if we're taking small actions, those can be much more likely for us to take as well. Not just easier for us to take, but much more likely. And they're also easier to bounce back from as well. So if we have a bit of an off day, we've bought a latte, for example, if our latte factor has ticked up a little bit, when actually we've decided I don't want to spend on that because I want to commit extra to my mortgage, it's much easier the next day to say to yourself, do you know what? I had an off day yesterday, but I'm getting back on track with my strategy today. So moving forward, I think let's also touch on goals. As Lisa said, this is a really important element of making change. So And I'd invite everybody who's on the call to really get specific and to get clear about what it is that you want to achieve. So rather than staying in really high level terms about what you want to get done, whether that's from an organization perspective or what you want to achieve from a financial perspective, don't stop there. Get clear on how exactly you will do it, what exactly you want to achieve, and importantly, your strategies to get there. If we think about it, and sort of in keeping with some of the other points that we've talked about, if you set a strategy, we're in July at the minute, and you thought, right, I want to up my savings a little bit or up my mortgage payments a little bit. Perhaps you wanted to set a target of saving £5,000 by the end of the year. So rather than saying, I want to save more, say, I want to save £5,000 by December. Pushing yourself to get even more specific again with that by saying, I want to save £5,000 by December, and how I'm going to do that is by saving £1,000 a month is really helpful. Getting more specific and stretching yourself again to do that by adding in, I'm going to save that £1,000 by automating a payment into a savings account after payday, so that I only spend after I've paid all of my necessary bills and I've saved that amount, will be really, really helpful for you. And you can hear how it's vastly different to that very high level goal of, I want to get on top of my savings, or I want to save a bit more. You are far more likely to get to where you want to be and know exactly how you need to do it and to execute if you're specific on that goal. So I cannot encourage you to do that more, to do that more. Now, when Lisa and I were having a chat about this presentation initially, one of the things that we also both do actually is do something called money dates, because these can be a really effective way of executing on some of these small daily actions. And because you're doing it throughout the course of the year, so monthly money dates, as we call them, they're each about 15 minutes. But over the course of the year, you've picked off some of your key tasks, actually, and made quite a lot of progress. You'll probably feel very different about your level of control, about your level of organisation within your finances if you do this. We've broken them down based on the start of the year. So January, we both sort of said to each other when we're having a chat, that is a direct debit and standing order audit time. So, if you've done your look back for your 90-day period, you'll probably have seen some of the power in doing this. But if you can spend 15 minutes at the start of the year or any month that works for you, going through those direct debits, weeding out what isn't giving you value, perhaps weeding out surprises as well, you will notice that actually you're starting to make meaningful savings. I worked with somebody recently who also doesn't mind me sharing this with you, but we identified £40 a week spending on lottery when we did this. It was just a regular payment that was being flagged when we were going through her direct debits. And she was really shocked at herself. She knew exactly what it was. It was just like, I don't know why I do this. I don't even think I look at the tickets and what I buy. But you can hear really quickly that 40 quid, stop buying a couple of lattes, and that's you've achieved that 50 quid a week saving that Lisa talked to you about earlier. So that's a really good exercise to do. We've penciled it in for January, but doing it at any month. And with that, I'd also encourage you to, if you can, pay attention to where the discomfort sits in as well. When we can sense that discomfort, usually in our bodies, but we might also be thinking it as well, that can be an indication that there's a spending that we're making or an outgoing that we're not 100% happy. So if it's something that's a discretionary spend, so not something like mortgage payment or something that we truly, really, really need, feeling uncomfortable with how we're spending that money could be an initial sign that that's one to consider. Now, we've got different tasks throughout the course of the month. As you can see, February, great for tax planning. March, great to look at your savings and how those are doing. And April, investments. And we go on from here. June, for example, we've tagged that as legal. What we mean by that is thinking about, things like will, power of attorney. Do you have one? If not, time to think about getting one in place, and that could be your 15-minute task for the month, or reviewing one that you've already got. I'll pick out August as well, car month. or it could be a bike month if you're a cyclist, because those also have quite big bills attached to them. Reviewing that spend, booking in your MOT to get that done, reviewing the costs of your insurance that go along with it, how much you're using the car and things like that. You will have your own list, people so often do. So I'd very much urge drafting 12 tasks that you could do on a monthly basis. Just short tasks that take about 15 minutes, 20 minutes to do, to make them nice and easy for you to get through. But over the course of the year, you'll find that you've gotten through your quite a good list of things, actually, and you should feel like you're in a much better place if you've taken that time out to think, okay, what are my bills? How are those looking? How are my savings looking? What's my credit score? Where are my debt levels at? Because automatically that yields a bit of action and a bit of further thinking. And of course, where our attention is going, our actions often flow from a psychological perspective.
I also think if you'd done all of these over the last 12 months, you'd feel quite smug right now, wouldn't you?
Massively, massively. I can tell you, I have just received my self-assessment tax return forms. I always have those done by August because I've got my paperwork to do. I feel amazing when I get my letter in September from HMRC, when everybody opens up fully for work again, and I've got mine done. And I've got friends approaching me in a panic about theirs later in the year. Smug sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So then maintenance tasks. So how do these differ?
So these are done on a less regular basis. So what we have here are things that are really good to do over the course of the year. They might take you a little bit longer, but they still help make meaningful differences. And because they're broken up over the course of the year as well, they're still easier to sort of chunk off, tackle, get done. Maintenance tasks might be different for all of us, depending on, where we're at, but it's things like doing, a net worth calculation, checking over your credit card and your bank statements in really close detail, knowing your rates. Are you in aggregate happy with where that spending is at? It's perhaps also an opportunity to do another 90-day look back as well, just specifically on, say, a credit card, if you use them, to look at the transactions that you're making. Based on some of the good work you've already done, you might actually see some really positive change as well. If you've weeded out transactions and types of spending that you have decided you don't value, those statements could look very different compared to the 90 days before. So it can be a really good moment to do that. But they tend to be bigger tasks in aggregate. And also the other one that I would urge that people do as part of a quarterly maintenance task is to really take a look at that budget or a spending plan, if that's wording that you prefer. Some people really shudder at hearing the word budget. I do. I prefer spending plan, or just to look at my spending generally, making sure that it's still working, because if our mindset has shifted, our lifestyle has shifted, and what have you, it can be really great just to understand, is what I set out for myself, is that plan I've set out for myself really working, or do I need to think about changing it? That could be perhaps by having, say, a bit of an extra buffer if you're still seeing a few spontaneous spends, for example, coming up that we haven't quite planned for, or even if you are making quite significant savings, more so than you expected, then there could be a bit of cash that you could put to work, whether that's by allocating a bit extra to your pension, or by making extra overpayments to your mortgage, for example, to achieve some of those targets that you touched on earlier, Lisa. And on the net worth side of things, this is quite a basic calculation, I would say, but it's a really, really powerful one to take away your liabilities from your assets, because that shows you where you're at in aggregate, in overall terms, and it can be really, really powerful to do on a regular basis. I do mine annually. And it helps me see progress on some of those bigger tasks that I've been, targeting making progress on. So that's something that I would urge you to do. And by going through those monthly maintenance tasks, you'll have a lot of the information that you need to do something like this, because you'll know where your debt's at, and using your credit score, for example, and the paperwork that you get with that will really be beneficial here, because if you have lost track of what debts you have and things like that, your credit report will tell you what debt you have.
And just, sorry to interrupt you, Sarah, but we handed out for the last webinar, sent in advance, a net worth tracker template and also an in and out monthly expenditure tracker as well. So if anybody didn't make that session but would like it, if you pop your email in the chat, but just make sure you only send it to us, not to everyone on the little drop down, then we'll make sure we send one to you afterwards. Okay, shall I go to the next slide?
Yeah.
So what to keep where? I have this filing cabinet just here full of everything, and I actually decided to take some of my own medicine and clear it out and think of this 7-year rule. So I'll let you teach us.
Yeah, the 7-year rule is an important one, not to forget. But what to keep where is something that often comes up when I speak to people about organising money and paperwork in general, actually, because people can want to make change and have all of these really good intentions, be really ready to start, but then the practicalities of it, something that people can be a bit unfamiliar with. So what I recommend to clients are the basics, really, that are on this slide in the first instance. Keeping all of your paper essentials in one place. Now, this rule applies whether you are a digital person or whether you're a paper person or a combo of the two. But the idea being is that if you have one location for your things, then you're not sat thinking, where do I need to get to? Where are all of these different bits and pieces? The next thing I urge people to do, and we ultimately are in a digital world, we all make liberal use of things like our email and apps and things like that, is to set up inbox rules. These are quick to do and they're automatic. And if you don't feel comfortable with having rules around an email, for example, coming in for your bank and it being set to go into a bank folder, and perhaps avoidance is something that is a bit of a gremlin in this one and it helps you avoid and it really plays into that, maybe simply setting up a folder in the first instance would be beneficial for you. So a folder for all of your banking things, a folder for all of your mortgage things, a folder for your investments will help you stay organised overall. Ensuring you keep what you need for the relevant time periods is also really important. 7 years is one to keep in mind just from a taxation audit perspective. And making sure as well that you also have something that I call a core financial drawer, which is a folder, ultimately, does not have to be a big one at all. Mine is tiny, of the things that you need to access on a regular basis. Those might vary for each of us. In mine, for example, is my card that I don't take out with me, my emergency, credit card, if you will. My card reader, my national insurance card, because I seem to need that on a regular basis, but I'm not 100% sure why, if I'm honest.
And impressed you've still got it.
I'm amazed I've still got it, actually. I did contemplate decluttering it, and I thought, no, I might regret that, actually, when I put together my core financial paperwork folder. And the other thing I pop in there is a copy of my will as well. Makes it super easy for when I'm doing my quarterly review and when I'm doing my monthly maintenance tasks. And I also pop in my insurance policies, because if anything was to go wrong, with me, then I like to think that the people who know where that folder is and who will need to access it know that it's there. And, if they have to access my will for any reason, then it's there. Nobody's in a panic, if I should get hit by a bus. So doing those few things, I hope, are achievable to everybody, but also quite meaningful as well in terms of getting organised. And one thing I would say is that within that one single location for your documents, within that, if you own your own business, you're self-employed, do keep your personal and your professional separate within those. That will make life much easier for you, just in the same way as typically business owners would have a separate bank account for their business and another one that deals with the personal financial matters as well.
Good tip. Financial detox.
Shall I also have a little bit of a chat around this one, Lisa? Then, yeah. Do you want to move forward onto the sure. Next slide? So I think that's got a bit of the substance behind what we're talking about. Thank you very much. So, in order to do this, bringing everything together for your paperwork and your financial bits and bobs will really position you to weed out what matters and what doesn't matter. So detoxing your transactions, for example, that will be a heck of a lot easier for you when you have brought everything together. And you can also do that with individual items within your financial world. Insurance is a great one. I'm doing my home contents insurance at the minute, and I'm reviewing that. I go through it and I weed out anything that I don't have anymore, because there's no point in paying for that in my insurance. So do bring things together and do examine the bits and pieces that you've brought together as well, because it's very likely that you'll make savings. So weed out what doesn't count anymore and weed out what doesn't matter to you anymore. So from an emotional perspective, a durability perspective, from that perspective, do also isolate the things that you need, but that you perhaps don't need to keep for a 7-year period. It could be expenses, say, that you file for your work when you're a PAYE employee. Once you've filed your monthly expenses, if you happen to be in that sort of work and you don't need those anymore, then, great. You could consider potentially getting removing those from your life. You can also consider, once you've hit that 7-year threshold, disposing of what you no longer need because you've passed that auditing period. The rule around 7 years is not to force us to keep stuff for forever and ever, but to force us to keep it for a certain period of time, because that's when we can get questions. Within that period of time, that's when we can get questions around our tax affairs and things like that. But once that phase has passed, then you've got some choices on your hands. And a nice choice, in my view, is to be able to weed things like that out of the big cabinet that's behind you if you're Lisa, or the digital folders, for example, if you're me. I keep mine digitally because I hate having things around me like that. And then anything else as well that's just simply no longer valid. Guarantees are a big one that, for whatever reason, manuals, people seem to have loads and loads of these, but there's a validity period attached to stuff like this. It's not always relevant. Insurance and updates that we tend to get that we are due to renew something, whether it's insurance or our council tax new year is starting. Quite often what we need to keep track of is the information that is going to be relevant to us, or a policy that's going to be relevant to us for that period that's the 12 months ahead. But what we don't need are all those bits and bobs reminding us, all the correspondence reminding us to take action, that we've got a change that's due. So do try to think in cold hard logical terms. Can I get rid of this? Is this something I need to keep for a long period of time? Is it something I need to keep for a short period of time to take action on, but actually I can dispose of it once it's done? And once you've gone through that, what you tend to find is that you've done a really nice financial detox, actually, as well as a physical or a digital detox of your correspondence. And hopefully you feel much more on top of things and in a better place.
I didn't know, Sarah, when you told me that you can actually take things back to the bank to safely dispose of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, if we move forward onto the next slide, I think we're due to cover that, aren't we? You can take things back to the bank. You can make use of their shredding facility. Their confidential bin facility, and some banks, HSBC is one of them I discovered recently, that will also take cards back for recycling purposes, as well as disposing of the elements within the card that contain our personal information, because it's great to be getting rid of certain pieces of correspondence, but particularly when it's physical, we do really need to be mindful of our personal information. So do make use of shredders. I make use on a regular basis, unfortunately for my bank, of its facilities. I was there yesterday dealing with a passbook that I no longer need, and they very kindly did that for me. You can also invest in a shredder. And something I do on an annual basis with a friend is that because she runs her own business, and I have some bits and bobs that I like to deal with personally that my bank won't also, it's got nothing to do with my bank, so they won't take it off me, I don't think, is that we employ a company to come to our house, and they're a commercial shredder. So we just do it either one of our houses, and we hand over all of our stuff, we get it done, and it's taken away and disposed of appropriately. So there are a few different strategies that you can think of leveraging when it comes comes to shredding, so that you're not in that position where you're feeling a bit stuck with what you've got, and you want to get rid of it, but you don't know how.
And we put together then on this next slide the some books that we both really loved, and I've never heard of this 10-minute digital declutter before, but I think that's probably something I should read. So do you want to talk about the ones you've picked, Sarah, and I'll go through
absolutely mine. So no surprises. The KonMari consultant chose 10-minute digital declutter, and the reason I like this is actually for two reasons. One, because while we've touched on some good strategies that you can put in place from a digital declutter perspective and digital organization perspective, digital organizing and detoxing is something you can go really, really deep and really, really technical with. However, it will take you forever to do if you don't have a good strategy around it. And the reason why I love this book is because it talks you through the hows and how to do your digital declutter, but importantly, how to do it when you're really pushed for time or when you just need to do it in really short bursts. So it contains strategies like spending 10 minutes a day reducing your inbox down. We've all got huge inboxes, haven't we? So that's really why I love that book. It is an achievable task, but you just need the right strategies. So I love that one. I also really love the Buy What You Love Without Going Broke, which is written by...
Title.
Yeah, it's a fab title, really accessible, I think. It's written by the host of a podcast called Frugal Friends. So it is American. It's an American podcast, and it's written by American authors. So, the health warning, I guess, does have that slant on it. However, what I really like about this is that not that many people speak about the sort of the life-changing magic of spending on what you value and then letting go of everything else. And that's something that they touch on. And that really speaks to me, as you can probably tell. But the other reason why I think it's quite interesting is that I think it fits with that notion of spending being something that actually we can learn to do, just in the same way that we can learn to save, we can learn to invest. None of us are born with these skills, but they are skills that we can pick up and that we can get really good at. And then I think the one that needs no introduction from me is tiny habits as well. It very much speaks to the power of small changes making a huge difference in our lives.
And then I picked, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm sure almost everybody's heard of this one, but I think if you haven't read it, it's just a really quick reminder of why the net worth and the ins and the outs really are so important to your financial foundations. So yeah, I love that one. It's a quick read as well if you haven't read it. And then The Psychology of Money, it's just fascinating, really. And I didn't put it on, and I was thinking about this morning when I was doing my spinning class. I haven't read it, but I'm really excited to, but I heard this man speak. He's called Daniel Crosby, and this is called The Soul of Wealth. And it's lots of mini essays to get you thinking about what's important to you and sort of reflecting on money. So, I mean, an example of why your money needs a why, the what is easy, but the how is hard. And then The Power of Habits, the riches in repetition. I'm quite excited to read all of them, actually. But yeah, I thought that was good. That was Daniel Crosby, The Soul of Wealth, which I think I would recommend as well. Well, hopefully I'll recommend it. I definitely recommend hearing him speak, put it that way. Okay, next one. So the most important thing about attending a webinar is to have some takeaways, have some actions, to make some improvements so that the hour that you'll spend with us is actually worthwhile. So thanks to everyone who's added their email into the hosts and panelists. But if you'd like us, well, we're not really going to hold you to account, but unless you're a client, of course. But if you want to just almost in the digital version of saying it out loud, if you put in the chat just to us, or you can say it to everybody if you feel comfortable. But what's your biggest takeaway? Maybe 1, 2, maybe even 3, the things that you're going to do that you've found interesting today. And Peter very kindly recommended The Richest Man in Babylon as a book to read. I'll give you a minute to either write it down or write it in the chat so you know what you're going to do from today. Oh, I love this, a folder of all the important documents in one place.
I love that one too.
Yeah. And do you know, I don't know what it is about me, but I love what Sarah said about thinking and planning ahead. I think it gets me really quite excited. Sometimes in a nervous way though, when I make big plans of what I'm going to try and achieve. I don't find it a chore.
Yeah, nerves come up quite a lot, for what it's worth, Lisa, when I'm with clients. They really do. You know, getting organised and approaching money, I think, as a combined task with getting organised. It can be quite emotional, you know, when you come face to face with your choices and the things you've got to do, but so worthwhile dealing with.
And do the nerves usually indicate excitement, so it's a positive thing, or is it something you trying to hold yourself back?
It can be a mix. You know, a lot of the time when people have called somebody like me in, it's because they need extra help, you know, and they need hand holding. Quite often what I find is that the nerves can be around people feeling judged, especially when they're at points, you know, in 30s and 40s is quite a common one I've found so far with people, where they feel they're not where they want to be, or where their friends aren't, you know, actually at. And then, you know, they want to, you know, have consultations with people before we kick off and do our work. And, you know, they tell you about it and they're just like, oh, I feel, you know, why don't I have this in hand? You know, it sounds like all of my friends do, and the nerves can kick in from that perspective. And then, you know, later on in the process, nervous excitement, absolutely, because people are on a roll with things. You know, they've started to make changes, they felt the benefit, and you'll get, you know, an excited sort of voice note saying, you know, oh, I'm about to try and find myself a financial planner. You know, I'm on my way to the meeting with them, and you know, and it's great to know that people actually, they've gotten themselves to that point where they're ready to take that step. And
as well, a sidestep story, but something that really made me think from when you said, I'm not where my friends are, or my friends have all got this together and I'm not. I remember a client coming in and he was just useless. He was all talk and not, well, he didn't have the assets that he portrayed, let's put it this way. And then his lovely friend came in and was really nervous for the meeting. And he's like, oh, I don't know if you want to take me on as a client because I'm not as wealthy as so-and-so. I'm not as good as so-and-so. And actually it was 10 times better, loads more money than him, if that's the barometer of success when you speak to a financial advisor. But it did just make me think sometimes those people that portray themselves as being really organized or very, very wealthy, they might not be. It's often the case, actually.
Yeah, I see that too.
Yeah. Right, moving on. I love everyone's goals. Thanks to everyone for putting them in. And also, just while we do the last little bits, if you've got any questions, Natalie's just kindly prompted me to say, if you've got any questions, pop them in the question and answer box, and we'll go through them before the end. So the first thing, how I can help, is I started off Miss Lolly in 2008 now, so a very long time ago, with the idea that if I was able to teach someone a little thing every single day, then that over time would compound. So you can follow me on Instagram, it's Miss Lolly Money. Do look for the blue tick, because I get loads of people impersonating me and trying to sell dodgy investments. So that's why I pay for that blue tick. It's not because I think I'm a celeb or anything. And then we do a fortnightly newsletter, the brief to our newsletter writers who are actually financial journalists, was we want it to be worthwhile, someone opening up each session, that either it's going to save them money or make them money, but ideally to the tune of about £350. So that's the brief they've been given. And I think on most ones they achieve that. So take a look, sign up either on misslolly.com or the 𝗪𝗔𝗃 Wealth website. And then lastly, that sort of dipping your toe in the water that I mentioned at the beginning, we do something called a financial diagnosis session. They're either £350 or £500. Oh, my photograph's gone. But they're either with me or with Holly, and we do this so that we'll build your time cash flow model, and you'll come away knowing 4 really, really important things that should either then help you to go off on your way and do your money in a way that is aligned with your goals, or we can then help you help you with it as well if you wanted to become a client. And the cost of the financial diagnosis is deducted against any advice costs as well, so you're not doubling up on fees. But the 4 things that you're going to know are what do you have to do every year to achieve your goals? What investment returns do you need every year? So that will just help you guide you. So let's say you've got a workplace pension, and inside your workplace pension, it's achieving a 6% return, but you know that you need a 7.45% return. Like in this example, you either need to change the investment or you need to pay more in to stay on track. You know where the land lies, so if you just keep doing what you're doing, what you're on track for. So this person in this example, if they didn't do any more, they're on track for £23,000 a year in retirement. Maybe that's okay, maybe it's not. Different people obviously have different goals. And then the last one is, what lump sum do you need to have accrued to be on track? And I think this is really important one for people who are maybe thinking, I probably will get an inheritance that I could rely on to help put that inheritance into perspective. It also is really helpful for people who have got their own business, and that business is going to be sold, or hopefully going to be sold, and it helps put that into perspective. Like, will these big ticket lump sums that may or may not come your way really achieve the goals in a way that you want? But this person needed an extra 100,000 to achieve their goals. So I think it all brings clarity. So I'll just let Sarah explain how she can help, because we're slightly different.
Yeah, well, very, very, very different.
Very different.
Yeah, a coaching psychologist that specializes in finance does not give financial advice. So very, very, very different. What I tend to spend a lot of my time doing is helping people with their money mindsets, because the emotional money's never just about numbers, to be perfectly honest. I really noticed that when I worked in the city. I noticed that working as a psychologist. And you're sit with myself
yeah.
as well. You know, the emotions count a great deal. So I spend a lot of my time doing that. In my work as a KonMari consultant, whether I do that separately or in combination with the financial side of things, it really comes down to me helping people do a really good tidy up, but very much focused on securing lasting change, because we look at everything through the lens of, what do you want to keep? What do you want to value? That's something that is really hammered into you as a certified KonMari consultant when you're doing your training, and you know, you get to meet with Marie during the sessions. So it can really, really help people not just do a bit of a panic declutter, as I like to call it, you know, of their clothes, of their entire house, but very much thinking mindfully and slowly, a bit more slowly than in some of those panic type situations, about what you want to keep and what you want to have in your life, and then how you have a plan around maintaining that environment. And, you know, when you do bring something new in, making sure that, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's the right thing for you. So I tend to do that. I also work with people on tackling things like debt, budgeting. I work with couples as well, because quite often what we see in couples and polyamory relationships is that not everybody has the same mindset. You know, no 2 people are the same. And how to work with differing mindsets, differing priorities in relationships is something that I tend to do quite a lot of. You can find me online on my website, or perhaps a bit more easily at Edit and Reset on Instagram.
Thank you. And just a quick reminder for everyone, well, it's not really a reminder yet because nobody knows about it, but on the Tuesday the 23rd of September, Sarah and I are joining forces again, and we're going to be talking about how to retire well. So this is really aimed at those of you who are in the approach to retirement, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, but also are in early retirement, because it's very weird to say I spend most of my clients' accumulation years really making them to save more, spend less, develop those kind of money habits. But then when people get to retirement, it's like my personality switches, and then it's about making sure you spend well, because most people are too nervous to spend well in retirement. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about, but that's Tuesday the 23rd. And then the next webinar, which is in the business webinar series, is the 16th of September. And so all the save the dates and things like that, you can get in touch with us to book your place. Okay, so yes, so this is also then the final one of this series, which is the busy people one. It's going to be the investing masterclass. I'm joined by an amazing lady called Poppy, who's an investment manager, but she just knows how to make it simple. We're going to talk about all the different types of investing. You're really going to come away knowing what the difference is between active and passive investing, how to invest rather than gamble. I think a lot of people, especially on Instagram or social media, get a education how to gamble rather than invest. We're going to do the other way around. How to tax plan, what to do if you get a windfall. Believe it or not, we see it so many times. People freeze or freak out when they get a windfall. So we'll help you with that. And then 5 mistakes that I see and how to avoid them. So it'll be just an hour, but you really will learn so much in that session. So that's 14th of October at 1 o'clock. So we covered a lot, Sarah, so thank you. And if anybody's got any questions, just let us know. I think we haven't got any in the question and answer box yet, but if you have any, please feel free to ask. You've stunned everybody into silence. And tell me, Sarah, when you met Marie Kondo, was she just a really zen person?
Absolutely, yeah, and really tiny, and I'm tiny as well. But you know, I'm only 5'2". I'm short, but yeah.
You need to be tall, but I mean, we've only ever met online, so how would I know?
Yeah. So yeah, super calm, really, you know, exactly what you'd imagine. But she had quite an ethereal air around her, as well. Yeah.
Oh, I bet that was lovely. Well, we don't have any questions, so that probably draws us to a close. But thank you very much for your time, Sarah, and thank you everyone for coming along. Oh, somebody's just asked a question. I was just about to press stop. Sarah got in there. Can you explain easily compounding? So easily, there's the challenge. So compounding is, let's say I've got £100 in my savings account and I got 10% interest. In year one, I'm going to have £110 at the end. Now, if I got another 10% in year two, I'm not going to just have another £10. I'm going to now have 10% of 110, which would be £11. So in the early days, the compounding effect is very, very small, but eventually it's essentially growth on growth. And this is one that I covered, I can't remember the last one or the one before, but if you had, I'm doing this off the top of my head, if you had 1 pence and it doubled every day, it's not very exciting at the beginning, because like 1p becomes 2p, becomes 4, 8, 16p. And believe it or not, I challenge you all to do the maths. It becomes £5 million at the end. It's just insane at the end of a month. And that's the power of compounding, because on day 29, you had 2.5 million, and day 30, you had 5 million. So I hope that answered it easily. And then Jeff, I think it was, I can't see what it is, just asked, where do we book a financial diagnosis session? And you can either go on the Miss Lolly website or the LCH website, and it'll give you directions. But you email Abby, ABI, at lchwealth.co.uk. She can get you all booked in. Am I just about to press stop? Let's see if any more questions come in. But honestly, thank you everyone for coming along. It's lovely to have an audience to speak to. So thank you very much. And thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.